We are just about 3 weeks away from spring practice across the nation and including the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We've got John Kennedy on the line from Always Irish, and this is our Notre Dame show that we bring you practically every week. That's the goal. And please jump on the live chat room and bring us your comments and questions for John and myself. John, how are we doing tonight?
Fantastic. Good to be here, my friend.
I know it. It's a good thing we got started here, I believe, talking Notre Dame football each and every week. And our goal, again, is to give you a live stream for 1 hour each and every week. So leave your comments and questions. I'll pass them along to John, and who knows, I may have something to say as well. The Notre Dame defense certainly has been a work in progress and developing well since that bottoming out in what would that have been 2016, I believe, at 4-8, correct?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up first.
Well, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I do, and I bring up the facts.
Yeah, you're right. 2016 was definitely the bottoming out for sure.
That was an ugly season for the Irish at 4-8, and the defense was just ravaged week after week. But since then, they have dedicated themselves to that side of the ball and been much improved. But you're looking for a defensive back coach, and you think you've got a good one coming in from Cincinnati, right?
That's correct. Notre Dame is notoriously slow with their hiring process. And I don't know what it is, but it just seems with them, everything takes a while to get through the system with interviewing, getting it approved or whatnot. So this has been dragging on for a while. And it seems like it's going to be Mike Mickens from Cincinnati. Now, Mike Mickens, it's interesting the backstory here. He actually played under Brian Kelly when Brian Kelly was at Cincinnati and they were making their run. So it's an interesting dynamic here because there should be nobody that understands Brian Kelly better than one of his former players. And in the same way that Tommy Rees is kind of in that situation, seems like Mike Mickens is going to join and be in that situation as well. So I like the fact that he has this long history with Kelly that suggests to me he knows he could get along with Kelly. He knows his quirks. He's not always the easiest to deal with. So obviously that's something that Mike Mickens is comfortable with. So I don't think we'll have any issues with them not getting along or Kelly rubbing him the wrong way. It seems like he knows what he's getting into.
John, this is funny because you made it crystal clear with the last few statements, but at first I was thinking, do I need to read between the lines that this has actually become a component in Brian Kelly's hiring of the coaching staff, that these guys we need to find the right fits that can actually get along with Brian Kelly? This doesn't seem to be something that's a talking point for most head coaching hires in looking at a coaching staff. But with Brian Kelly, do we need to even go to that?
Yes and no. I think that may be a bit unfair to go that far. He's become I really do. He's become much more tolerable to deal with, amiable with the media lately. But even just with Chip Long, the offensive coordinator who just left, it surfaced that there was issues with them all getting along and the dynamic and all of that. So this guy having that history with BK does give me some comfort there. He knows how he operates. The other thing I like about this is he is considered to be one of Cincinnati's top recruiters. That's obviously appealing. I do like the fact the guy's only 32 years old, and I actually kind of like that, especially for recruiting defensive backs. I like that we're getting some young, new, energetic blood into the system. And I'm just kind of thinking he'll energize that recruiting effort, being only 32 years old. So I do really, really like that.
So as soon as you said the name Mike Mickens and tacked on Cincinnati, I definitely remembered that name. And I was thinking he played in the NFL, didn't he? And he certainly did. It wasn't a long run, but he had 3 quick stints with the Dallas Cowboys, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Cincinnati Bengals basically was in camp and around it. So I think I remember him more for being in those really good Cincinnati teams during the late 2000 era, as you mentioned, and Brian Kelly, of course. And the dynamic there in regards to recruiting positional coaches at this level versus the NFL level is, of course, it's almost paramount beyond the ability to coach the position is, can you recruit? And it's just a different dynamic.
Yeah. And you're right. He was a pretty darn good player. I think he was playing as a freshman at Cincinnati, a true freshman playing. And you hit on the actual recruiting. If I had one concern about this, it would be, it seems to me that, and no offense to Cincinnati, they're doing some good things right now. Recruiting for Notre Dame is a step up in expectation level than at Cincinnati. Some kids you might bring in Cincinnati, you might be applauded for. At Notre Dame, the bar's a little higher. They're going after a little bit of a different caliber of talent. That's the question I have. You're a great recruiter at Cincinnati. Notre Dame people aren't going to get excited about some of those kids that they end up getting. Does he have the ability to go in there and win the bigger fights with the big name programs and draw some of that talent in? So really, that's my only question, and there's no way to answer it but just to wait and see. But it's a different level of expectation recruiting at Notre Dame than Cincinnati. He's got to embrace that. He's got to love that, and he's just got to hit the ground running because the secondary is a position Notre Dame always seems to need help at, especially corner. We do get guys every once in a while, but Julian Love obviously is a good one of recent vintage, but that's usually a position Notre Dame struggled the last 25 years. So young, energetic, good history with the head coach. Can he recruit at this level is the question.
Notre Dame fans could care less about this, and it's inconsequential to his performance as a coach. But to put a cap on his career, he was an All-American as a junior. He had 6 interceptions, second in school history, 12 passes defensed. And again, I remember that Cincinnati team for going undefeated, then playing Florida in the Sugar Bowl and being destroyed. And Brian Kelly's, I believe that was pretty much the end of his run there at Cincinnati, I believe. That culminated his run in Cincinnati. They got him in the job at Notre Dame.
Yeah, and so it's obvious the guy knows the secondary, top to bottom, coach, player. It's just simply a matter of recruiting and winning some of these battles. That's what it's all going to come down to me. But he's energetic. He's young. He's been around the secondary forever. He knows what he's doing. I'm excited about it. I like having a younger guy, maybe more energy on the trail. I like that. So I'm encouraged.
Yeah. Our guy, Ryan Hinkie on the line. Go Irish. Time to take the next step. Pray to touchdown, Jesus, come Clemson.
You know what's funny about that? I literally did that last week. I went to Notre Dame Sunday. I went down the tunnel. There was nobody around. And I looked through those bars right out onto the field. There was snow. And I recorded it and put it on Twitter. And I just put, hello, old friend. How are you going to treat me November 7th next year? And I put it on Twitter, and it was just me and my thoughts at Notre Dame Stadium with nobody around.
No prayers required for Notre Dame football prior to November 7th? No other games require that type of
we're still going to need them.
Divine intervention?
That's a fair point, but that's a big one.
It's a big one. It's the best team on the schedule by far. Sure, Wisconsin and USC fans might take a little exception to that, but certainly Clemson is in a different class on Notre Dame's schedule coming up in 2020, and a schedule that we've dived into. So anybody on here for the first time catching our Notre Dame show, and we have only just a handful on the line right now, but we know that several hundred, if not 1,000, will be watching eventually once this video processes and posts, is that go back and look at the previous discussions with John and myself and a number of other Notre Dame contributors. We had some nice discussions concerning recruiting, personnel for 2020, and the schedule I don't know if you've got anything to say, John, about Andrew Scruggs' comment about Todd Light, who was a Notre Dame all-timer, great player, not necessarily a great recruiter, according to Andrew.
Andrew would be correct. Yes, absolutely 100% correct. And see, these kind of things get touchy because he's a Notre Dame guy. He's a big name Notre Dame guy that we all, watched, love, respect. Really on-field coaching, good. But it was not a very well-kept secret that he was lagging in recruiting. And that's just something you can't have. And even as much as Notre Dame people, and I love him, the recruiting lagged. And I just don't think that's something that came natural and very comfortably for him. And it was kind of leaked out there that whatever direction they go next, they believe it's going to be a better recruiting situation. Todd Light wanted to go back to California, be with his family. So this all kind of worked out. But Andrew was absolutely correct. That's factual and accurate.
Because if you think about it, if you grow up in football, meaning you always played, and then the natural transition is to become a coach, well, most of the things that you love to do and are inherent to your capabilities have to do with actual football. And then other things are tacked on that require other skill sets. Recruiting would be one, dealing with the media, public relations, the boosters, the fans, all that for a head coach more so than anybody else, but dealing with people, personnel, so forth. And recruiting is a sales job. And you could be the greatest player on the planet and even a really good coach, but not necessarily a good recruiter.
Yeah, and Todd's a great guy, and it's one of those deals where it's like, it's not that personal, it's just business. And so both sides kind of agreed that this would be best for both parties. Notre Dame people are always going to love Todd, and I will too. But I'm excited to get somebody in there with some new young energy that looks forward to hitting that recruiting trail. And everybody knows recruiting at Notre Dame is not the easiest thing to do. And it takes a certain guy to want to do that.
New King God. I don't know what the faith designation there is in relation to Notre Dame and the Catholic faith, but we'll go with it. New King God, thank you so much for the contribution to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. The $1.99. Thank you so much. YouTube takes taxes. Okay. Well, we still appreciate the contribution's phenomenal. Thank you so much. That goes without saying that anything that you do, like the videos, comment, share the videos out there on social media, and subscribe. And for you Notre Dame fans that want this to continue, please let people out there know that we're around. And our effort has been to deliver this each and every Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, based on people's work schedules and personal lives. We may have to flex it around from time to time, week to week. So just stay with us. That's why you need to subscribe. Therefore, you get the notifications and you know when we're going to go live. So New King God wants Notre Dame to travel back on down to Miami for the next.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. $1.99 for that comment. Go ahead, load up on it. I'll just say this. Two things. One is, that's fine. We went down to Miami. Bad things happen. I understand that. But I would definitely take where Notre Dame's trajectory and program is at right now over what they got going on down there. And that's just me being very straightforward about it. And two, and this is a bigger picture question, but it really astounds me, Florida State and Miami in that talent-rich state down there, that they can't get it together. That is almost criminal that they have all that talent in that state, in that radius, and they can't put it all together and at least be a threat to Clemson in the ACC. So they beat the hell out of us in 17, but they got their own worries down there in Miami. We're worried more than about us.
We talk Notre Dame here each and every week. We've got John Kennedy on the line from Always Irish. I'll make my last comment on Miami football because we're talking Notre Dame, obviously, is the focus here. I did a look at the last 15 years of Miami football, John. they win 55% of their games. 55% of their games. I found what was the statistic I found? That there have been, I went through the whole video and just basically posted Miami's accomplishments or lack thereof versus a number of schools that you would consider to be very mediocre in college football, and put it on par with what Miami's accomplished over the last 15 years. And again, barely playing over 500, not winning any conference championships, with recruiting that has been pretty good, that should keep them in the top 15 to 20 in the country. The 2017 game we discussed at length a few weeks ago with John and some others. I'll put it to bed. 41-8 is a butt kicking. Everyone acknowledged that. It was a game that was played. All due credit to Miami for that one game. But again, it was one game, and there is nothing else to determine based on the results on the field for Notre Dame that season and Miami that season to determine that there was much of a gap between those two teams. But that's what happened one night in Miami, and it certainly was the only score that goes on the scoreboard.
Yeah, that's totally fine. There's nobody more upset about how that went than I am. But what I would ask is, if you want to take that position, that's 17. We're 2 going on 3 years down the road. Look at the diverging paths here ever since that game. Turnover chain, Miami's back. Then what happened? Okay, so, that's going on 3 years ago. It's still going to make me mad. But if that's the best you got to start looking at where you're at.
I'm doing the math for you, John. 7-6, 6-7 is, of course, 13-13 the past 2 years, and they lost the final games of 2017. 13-16 for the Canes.
And Notre Dame's what? 33-6 the last 3 years? Or okay, so so whatever. I don't want to get into it, but every time I'm on here, somebody brings up that game just to see my head pop off my body live on your show. And so, it is what it is. But Miami and Florida State should both be better given the talent they have and the state they're in. So it would be nice to see somebody try and compete with Clemson in that conference.
And another hot topic that relates to Miami and Florida State and Clemson would, of course, be Notre Dame's affiliation with the ACC. I don't know if we'll get into this tonight, but certainly discuss this with John and others in previous videos. So look those up. We've done 2 Notre Dame live streams over the past month, so please look those up as we've dissected Notre Dame football. But let's stay on the recruiting trail and the recruiting topic, because bringing in Mike Mickens, possibly from Cincinnati, and hoping that he's able to bring in elite secondary talent, leads us to a discussion we had a few weeks ago regarding where Notre Dame stands in recruiting, which is in a very good place. But are they going to win national championships and seriously contend for national titles where they are in the recruiting? But Brian Kelly made some comments recently regarding where he thinks recruiting is headed.
This is really, really interesting to me. So Brian Kelly's a decade plus on the job here at Notre Dame. They've been up, down, kind of. The last few years, recruiting has gotten better. But Brian Kelly came out around signing day and said, for the first time publicly at least, that they plan on changing some things, adapting a little bit. And he said, we think we should be ending up in that 5, 6, 7 range and not so much 15, 16, 17 near the top 20. And that's interesting for Brian Kelly to go out on a limb and say. My sarcastic wit, my first response to that is, how could it take you 11 or 12 years to realize that you need to recruit better to win big and that should be the goal? So that's what he said. What I'm really interested to see is structurally, internally, what is going to change? How is he going to be more involved in recruiting? That's one dig that's been taken on him, even by some recruits who ultimately don't end up at Notre Dame, saying they didn't feel like Brian Kelly was as involved as the head coach in their recruitment as some other head coaches tend to be. That's an area where I think he needs to change if he has that goal to get near that top 5, 6, 7 ranking. So it's easy to say, and it's kind of harder to do. And I'm kind of in wait and see mode, whether that's realistic and possible, quite frankly.
Yeah, it only goes to reason that if you're recruiting in the top 10 to 15 in the nation, that most likely, unless you play an extremely light schedule on a regular basis, which Notre Dame does not, or you just have the best coaching staff in the world. And there is much to be said about player development, of course, and places like Wisconsin and formerly Michigan State, Kansas State, and Bill Snyder's heyday, and others have certainly out-coached their recruiting ranking. But at Notre Dame, the goal is, I would believe, to play elite football, and even Brian Kelly has stated that. And they've been near that place. They've been on that second tier, and we've talked about that in recent weeks. But that if you're going to recruit in the top 10 to 15 in the nation, that you're most likely going to finish in the top 10 to 15 in the nation. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that is welcome at most places across the country. But at Notre Dame, finishing 9-3 and 10-2 just about every year is, again, for any given year, you're not going to be complaining. But when they're just stacked upon each other year after year after year after year after year, and there's no payoff, certainly I'm sure that you would be happy with 10-2 and 9-3 if every 4 or 5 years there was a 11-1 or 12-0, boom, we're in the playoff. And of course, that did happen 2 years ago, but with not the kind of result that you would want.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously right. Listen, it's a high-level problem to be sitting there frustrated. Your team's 10-2, going to the playoff and getting beat by a dominant team like Clemson. I realize it's a good position to be in. I am not saying Kelly's terrible, Notre Dame's terrible, 10-2's terrible. But like you said, this is Notre Dame. There is no divisional banner to try and win. So when that's your situation, it's playoff or bust. And we've seen just how close they've been the last few years. And it makes you really have a view of we've gotten pretty close and then we fall short. What else do we need to close that gap? And one of them is, quite frankly, high-end skill, speed, talent. We just need more of it. And it shows when we get matched up with the Clemson or we play a Georgia. Sometimes they just have more speed and skill, elite guys. And that's what Notre Dame's trying to build. So they're close, but they're not quite there yet. The 20 class might bring a lot of that, and 2021 should bring more of that. And so we're getting close. But I don't want to seem like 10-2 is terrible, shut the program down. But this is Notre Dame, and Brian Kelly just hasn't gotten over the hump yet. And people are like, okay, 10 years, 11, 12, 13, 14. How long is it going to be, buddy? And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Tantalizingly close is where we're at.
As Jay Jobs points out, this is year 10 for Brian Kelly. I had made the statement that Brian Kelly took over after coaching Cincinnati to the Sugar Bowl against Florida, and that makes sense because Florida won the national championship in 2008. The next season, they came to the brink of winning the national championship again under Urban Meyer. In 2009, they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. They only had one loss. They played Brian Kelly in his final game in the 2009 season. Kelly's last game at Cincinnati. Kelly gets the Notre Dame job in 2010, and this is now year 10 under Brian Kelly. So, Jay Jobs, we appreciate, of course, your support for the channel and encouraging others to hit the thumbs up on the like button. Jay Jobs asking, and before I put words in John's mouth, I can anticipate the answer. Jay Jobs asking, does John want Brian Kelly to still be the coach of Notre Dame in 10 years? What I'm guessing is John wants to know what the record is going to be over the next 10 years and if there are going to be college football playoff and national championship game appearances in the next 10 years.
The way it's going, if he did that, he'd go 10-2, 10-2, 10-2 times 10. and win 10 games and then lose to the two best teams we play, because that's kind of where we're at. But the reality is Ryan Hankey here, he's had a couple good comments on here. He's spot on both. He's had two. One's a recruiting point and one's a Kelly point. And the recruiting point, he's right. If you do average out, Notre Dame had a very small class, 17 guys in this last class. That made their ranking drop. They got 17 guys, not 23, 24. You're not going to be up there, okay? Notre Dame can't oversign, send them to the JUCO. Notre Dame can't play those games. So that was a smaller class, but Ryan is correct. If you take that class, divide it out by average star talent, it did fall 8, 9, 10 in the range if you average out the talent per player. The question is, with Notre Dame not really a hat flip team on signing day, not really playing that game in that ballpark, is it realistic to think when more scholarships are available, there's a half dozen more really good athletes and high academic kids that want to do the early signing day, get in with Notre Dame? Because that's where I think Notre Dame does have an advantage, is that early signing day. Because a lot of those kids that are big on school, their families value it. They're not messing around with the signing day, jerking you around this hat and then throw it away, get another hat. Notre Dame doesn't go after most of those kids, and when they get one, it usually doesn't work out anyways. And so the job, I think, would be, when more scholarships free up, is there a half dozen more really good athletes and really smart kids that they can get in on that early signing day wave, and then see where that class falls when they got 20, 21, 22 and not 17 guys.
Do you agree with Ryan Hankey's comment here, John, about are you as high on Clark Lee possibly being the successor?
Yes, I am. But I
just want to outline for the audience. Clark Lee is the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame.
Yeah, and listen, Clark Lee, I've said it before on your show, he's the all-star of this staff. He's been losing guys in the NFL, and then they come back, give up 18.5 points a game the last 2 years, even with major personnel losses to the NFL. Clark Lee, he just gets these guys to play. And the big thing with Clark Lee is this: adjustments. Clark Lee is great at adjustments. You will actually notice that. That's a good point by Jay Jobs there. Clark Lee's halftime adjustments, you'll see Notre Dame's loose in the first half, sometimes allowing some garbage up the middle, whatever it is. And then they come out after halftime and tighten it up. I saw that all year last year. Clark Lee's phenomenal. The issue is Brian Kelly's about to ink an extension probably through 23-ish, 24-ish. Can you hold on to Clark Lee that long and then say you're the guy? I don't know if that's realistic. I'm afraid somebody's going to throw a bushel of money at him in the next year or two that he's not going to be able to turn down, and he's going to be gone. So I would love it, but I'm afraid we're going to lose him before we get to that point.
Yeah, the chicken and the egg, the recruiting and the winning, that's what works there. You got to win to recruit high. You got to recruit high to win. And there are very few that are able to take a subpar program and then be able to sell the recruits on before the proof of concept that the plan is going to work. But Notre Dame's not in that place. They can sell the recruit on, hey, we're right there. And Andrew's pointing out that yes, Notre Dame getting to big games seems to have boosted its recruiting rankings. I would have to go back and verify that. Typically, teams that have big seasons actually get the boost the next season, like the recruiting cycle, not immediately that they're playing in during that particular season. But let's say the teams that had a big 2019 season, that 2021 class will be a big one typically. And so Andrew is, of course, as you have lamented, several times to us, John, is looking for that big game, not appearance, looking for the win in the big game.
I feel like a broken record, but this is Notre Dame, and it's just 9-3 ain't going to get it done. 10-2 is not going to get it done, especially if you're rebuilding and it's year one with a new coach or something. Go ahead. But when you're 10, 11, 12 years in, people are just ready to get over the hump. I say this all the time. The last big game Notre Dame won they weren't supposed to win was Oklahoma in 2012, Halloween weekend. That's the last one they won that they weren't supposed to win. So they've done a lot of good things. They got things going in the right direction. It's a matter of finally getting over the hump and then seeing what happens from there. Maybe that once they do it, they know they could do it and they have more confidence to go do it. I don't know. But that's where we need to get. And going back to Ryan Hankey's other comment, or maybe it was somebody else about Brian Kelly long-term. I say this all the time too. Coaching at Notre Dame ages you worse than being the president. It's tough. You got people like me on you all over the time. You got to entertain all the boosters, keep that money coming in, keep all the priests happy. I mean, there's a lot of masters to serve when you're a Notre Dame coach that there isn't some other places. Now, that's not an excuse. Everybody who takes this job knows that. But I really think Brian Kelly's probably 2023, 2024, and then go to a beach somewhere for a year or two and then get into a TV booth. I could see him doing that. Now, the interesting part is if things take off and the recruiting goes really well the next couple years and they start thinking they got something brewing, will that entice him to maybe want to stick around? Because he hasn't won the big one, but he's won enough that he's there till he doesn't want to be there anymore. Barring a major scandal, Brian Kelly could choose his own exit.
We've got our guy Pigskin Pete of Pigskin Pete right here on YouTube covering Clemson football in the live chat. Good to see you, Pigskin. Always good to see you. And, of course, Clemson and Notre Dame in South Bend, first week of November. Can't wait. Should be interesting. The last two times they got together, we had the one blowout, of course, in the playoff, but we also had a very close call for the Clemson Tigers at home in 2015, right? 2015, they went to the national championship game, and we had a failed two-point conversion in the rain. 24-22, I believe, was the final score.
Yeah, I'm gonna host Pigskin November 7th. We're gonna tailgate. I think he's gonna come into Chicago and then come over to South Bend. So we're gonna hang out that day. Even I'll invite him into my tailgate, even though he's gonna have all that orange on. He's okay. He's welcome. So yeah, I am really excited about that. It's gonna be a good game and a big build up. The hope would be, in a perfect world, both these squads would be undefeated, and that would be the biggest game at Notre Dame for a home game in a very long time. Well, probably any game in 2012 where they were undefeated and riding each week. So that should be a good one. And then I did see Dennis here join a conference, and then maybe Notre Dame will win something. My response to the join a conference thing is really simple. Why would we willingly water down our schedule? Not interested. Why would we willingly water it down, lock ourselves into playing the same handful of teams? Not interested. So that makes it harder to make the playoff, but I still prefer it. Asked and answered.
It's not going to happen, and it's certainly not going to happen connected to the conference I would like to see Notre Dame join, because I think it would be a natural fit from a tradition standpoint to join the Big Ten.
Yeah, and geographically in a lot of ways as well.
Geographically, they're smack dab right in the middle of the Big Ten.
Hey, Notre Dame wanted to join the Big Ten at one time, and they said no. That happened before. That was close to happening. Very close to happening. And I heard the Big Ten pulled the plug on it. And
what was the time frame on that?
Before I was alive, I think.
Yeah, that's been a long time ago.
I literally think it was before I was alive.
And the Big Ten blew it right there.
But really, listen, we value independence. And to Notre Dame people, that's natural and just something we've always embraced because it's our world. I know it sounds weird to the outside, but Notre Dame people love that. That's a part of the identity. It has been ever since Newt Rockne took the train all over the place. And so we really don't want to give that up. And that half ACC agreement, a part of that was to provide a soft landing for all the other sports programs that Notre Dame has that are full members in the ACC. And so to get them in that conference, and then that was what it was. Is it ideal for either party? Really, probably not. But that's what they had to do to get all their other programs into the ACC, which is what they wanted to do.
Talking Notre Dame football here with John Kennedy. You can join him on Always Irish. So where is the best place to find you, John?
You can find me on YouTube. Just type in Always Irish. I'll pop right up. You'll see my logo. On Twitter as well. Just search Always Irish. You'll find me there. We're on all the iTunes, Google, Stitcher, that kind of stuff.
So here's the deal, folks. Every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, we talk Florida State football live for 1 hour. We also do Miami each and every week. We do Ohio State each and every week, but because of guest schedules and my schedule as well, we're not able to nail down a specific time. Now, for a third or fourth time, we have dedicated ourselves to talking Notre Dame football live for 1 full hour with John and some other contributors, and would love to do that each and every week. But it's going to be difficult to nail down a specific time, although we have settled in to a certain extent on Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Therefore, if you want to catch these live streams, and in addition to those dedicated live streams, we've done a live stream on Florida, Alabama, LSU, oh my goodness, UCF, Virginia Tech, Oregon, and some other ones I'm forgetting, Auburn this afternoon. So what you need to do is subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, turn on that bell with a notification, and you never miss a live stream. So we got spring practice starting the day before St. Patty's Day, correct?
It's kind of goofy. I believe I'm pretty sure they have one practice, then they have St. Patrick's Day and spring break, and then they come back and get into spring practice, and then a few weeks after that, we have the blue and gold game. So it's a little goofy the way they're planning that out. But it is what it is, and I just hope nobody gets hurt. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with that. And you know what, Johnny Bays here, he's got a good point. He mentioned Michigan State, and it's in my opinion, I think Notre Dame should play one of Michigan State or Purdue almost every other year, or one of them. Geographically, that makes a lot of sense. Historically, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans would like to see that too. Michigan State, Notre Dame, they always battle tight, especially in the D'Antonio era. Almost all those games are like one score coming down to the end. Good physical, tough matchups. And so geographically, it would be nice for Notre Dame to have that more with Michigan State and Purdue as well, being in state right down the road.
We also have the super chat on. If you would help us to build the channel, like, comment, share the videos out there on social media. So here's the deal with sharing the videos. You've got a social media influence and sphere that we don't have. John doesn't have. I don't have. We all have a different sphere of people that we can connect with. So grab the videos, share them out on social media, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, and obviously on Twitter. Jay Jobs asking, who is John's all-time Notre Dame player?
I've said it before. I'm a Rocket Ismail type of guy. Speed wins, speed kills. You can't teach it, but if you have it, that's all you need. And so Rocket Ismail, just the electricity, every single touch, the potential to take it all the way. The 2 kick returns in the rain at the Big House in '89 is still one of my favorite Notre Dame moments of my childhood. So he's mine of vintage while I'm alive, at least. I mean, I'm not going to pull George Gipp out, from the 20s. But so Rocket Ismail's my guy. And his personality is a part of that too. He's an electric guy to talk to, energetic. He comes back and talks at the pep rallies. Like just his energy level, even now as he's getting a little bit older when he comes back, I relate and love everything about the Rocket. So that's my guy.
Get Andrew explaining to Johnny Bays the reason he believes Michigan and Notre Dame should always play is that they're the only two teams that hated each other so much that they refused to play for years.
The hate's real. There's no doubt about it. And it's interesting. We kind of covered this one of the other shows. It's really interesting. Like you have Michigan and Ohio State, and they hate each other, and that makes sense. And Michigan State. Who Notre Dame fans hate the most? It depends on geography for a lot of people, I think. If you're a Notre Dame fan in LA, you're going to hate USC. Me being near Chicago, it's Michigan for me. So I think some of it's geographic. For me, that's the number one. They don't like us. I don't like them. And that's just fine with both parties, I believe.
Talking Notre Dame football, we got John Kennedy on the line from Always Irish. There's a number of ways in which you can contribute to the channel right here. Please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. And also, we've got the super chat available as well. Notre Dame goes to the practice field on March 16th. Anything in particular, any news out of camp that will make you feel better or worse about this team heading toward fall camp?
Well, I mean, the big thing obviously is, and it's just like with baseball with spring training starting now, health should be and is the number one concern. You don't need anything goofy happening. But the one thing I've been looking at, I've been trying to break down some of the rosters, some of the numbers, the returning talent numbers. And I'm finding a dichotomy here that's making me uncomfortable with my own thought process. I'm a numbers guy. I'm pretty good at not letting my emotions get involved with Notre Dame. When they need to be called out, I call them out, and I usually go by the numbers. So here's what's interesting. This receiving core, the leading pass catcher isn't even a wide receiver. It's the tight end who was the backup tight end or the second tight end last year, Tommy Tremble, with 30-something catches. So that's the biggest pass catcher we have other than the grad transfer Skowronek, who's coming over from Northwestern. So that's a little bit of an interesting dynamic that now your leading pass catcher is a guy that wasn't even on the team last year, and he's coming in from Northwestern. So I find that really interesting. The other thing I'm looking to see is with this wide receiver group, Kevin Austin is a guy with a ton of talent, ton of athleticism, speed. He was all the hype a couple years ago, and he's been in Brian Kelly's doghouse. He was practicing with the team all last year, but he was suspended. He didn't suit up, didn't play in any games. Nobody really knew what was going to happen with him. The thought is that he'll be back with the team full speed, full bore next year. I think he's kind of out of sight, out of mind to a lot of Notre Dame people who see that he was in the doghouse and say, you'll never get out. He could be the linchpin to this young wide receiving core that I think could really energize that group and open it up for everybody. And so while the numbers returning are not great, I'm very excited. It's an athletic group. They don't have the big possession guy. They don't have Claypool. They don't have Boykin anymore. They got a lot of talent, and if it's used right, it could be a very exciting young group.
College football fans differ in this regard as well as many others. Some care about what their players from their schools do in the pros, and they hold that as a badge of honor. You know, we had 3 players that won the Super Bowl this year, or whatever the case might be, or so-and-so got inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he's a fill in the blank. Others say, yeah, it'd be great if so-and-so went on to have a great NFL career, but I really don't care. Good riddance. See ya. whatever happens, happens. I only care about what they did in college. Of course, Notre Dame has been, I think, one of the marks of Brian Kelly's improved recruiting at Notre Dame has been what we've seen at the NFL draft for Notre Dame over the past decade, over what we saw for probably the previous decade, to where it was alarming, the lack of Notre Dame names being called at the NFL draft for about 10 years, as opposed to what we were accustomed to. Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC are the three most drafted schools in the history of the NFL. So I'm seeing all sorts of articles. Obviously, Cole Kmet and others. The offensive line has been very good and produced NFL players in recent years.
That offensive line lineage is really the big. That's where a lot of it's at now with Notre Dame is that offensive line lineage. But
so are you in the bucket where you care what these guys do in the NFL? And secondly, do you track them?
Okay, my answer to that is genuinely yes and no. Genuinely, and I will explain. Obviously, it's a good mark for your university, and it helps future recruiting classes when you see Quentin Nelson road grading people for the Colts and being called a generational offensive lineman who's got Canton written all over him, okay? So, yes, it's obviously awesome to see your guys getting drafted. It's good publicity. It's good for the school. That helps you recruit yourself. Notre Dame's getting into that level where they're putting 8, 9, 10 guys that are getting invited to the combine the last few years. That's a really good number. That's only behind a couple of the elite. Talking about Ohio State, talking about Alabama, talking about Clemson, right? The downside of that is, the flip side is me sitting there saying, you got all these NFL guys. Why can't you win a big game once in a while? Well, they're all at your school. So it's both. I'm happy to see him doing well, but Notre Dame people want to brag. We got 9 guys going into the pros. Well, that's great. If they were all that good, why didn't we win any big games? So I genuinely mean it, that it's good and bad. It's frustrating and wonderful.
Pigskin Pete chipping in with his contribution. Thank you so much, Pigskin. $2.99. And I guess I got to read the comments when they do donate. Pigskin, Notre Dame fan, and Ohio State fan. I'm Mr. Neutral here, Pigskin. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm the voice of college football. We just talk football here. Just talk college football. I am completely neutral. No, truth be known, Ohio State fan. I don't shy away from that. I don't emphasize it because I cover everyone and try to stay neutral, to the point that I make this anytime I get slammed for being a Buckeyes fan. I remind people, and the video evidence is there ad nauseum, that I ranted and raved in 2016 when Ohio State was selected over Penn State to go to the college football playoff, because I thought rightfully Penn State earned that bid to the college football playoff, and I stood my ground on Penn State and did not say that Ohio State should have been selected for the playoff. So I try to maintain my neutrality. Can we as humans stay unbiased to a T? No, it's impossible.
But Mark, I will say this though. You do about as good a job as anybody of being really neutral and fair to everybody. And it's a tricky thing to do when you cover as many games and teams all over the country as you do. I will credit you that. You are capable of being a lot more neutral than I could be. I mean, I admit that. But I do appreciate that about your show. You're pretty darn fair. And you know what else, for that matter? Pigskin Pete's pretty darn fair too.
He is.
Clemson guy down there. He's pretty darn level-headed and fair. And I respect that. And I appreciate that from both you guys.
Yeah, I carry it as a badge of honor at times, and I appreciate those comments. I carry it as a badge of honor sometimes when Ohio State fans who don't know, because they haven't watched long enough to know, berate me over being I have comments. I should save them is what I need to do. I have comments, and I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about dozens and dozens from Ohio State fans who have called me a Buckeye hater. You hate Ohio State, and I just chuckle and think, okay, I must be doing my job.
That's how it is. You're never going to make everybody happy. But I noticed that right away from you. You're very, very fair and open and like learning about what everybody else has going on. So I do appreciate that.
John, I appreciate it as well. Notre Dame is often cited as being overrated. So I hear this all the time. Notre Dame's overrated, Michigan's overrated, et cetera, et cetera. So I always like to know who's doing the rating and what are you talking about? Not that there's not some thread of evidence or something to it, possibly, but this is what I did, John. I went back through and, I sometimes, like you, I'm a stats nerd and facts and so forth. So, man, there are just pages and pages of me going through the preseason and postseason AP rankings for the past decade. Every team that showed up at least once, and I'm talking Nevada, Tulsa, I went to the nth degree, that showed up on at least one AP preseason or postseason ranking is listed here. And I cut a video on this to see, okay, let's see. And we'll take Notre Dame for an example. Are they truly overrated by the media? Okay. In 2010, they were preseason unranked. They finished unranked. Okay. In 2011, they began the season preseason number 16 and finished unranked. So that would give some slight indication as being maybe slightly overranked or overvalued to start the season. But of course, in 2012, we all know what happened that year. Notre Dame was unranked in the preseason and finished number 4, playing in the BCS championship game. The next season, in 2013, they started the season preseason number 14, finished number 20. It's in the same ballpark generally. In 12, 13, 14, they started the season at number 17 preseason and finished unranked. The pollsters did a heck of a job in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. In 2015, Notre Dame was preseason number 11, and they finished number 11. Then in 2016, of course, that team that started number 10 preseason, and they beat somebody good early. Was it Michigan or Michigan State? They beat somebody really good early.
Which year?
The bad season, the 4-8 2016 season. They beat somebody in game 2 or 3.
Didn't beat any. No, nothing. We didn't.
I think you beat somebody. I remember you beating somebody good early, and then it all.
No, I don't think
after
so.
That
2016, I'm pretty sure they lost to Texas early in that overtime game down in Austin to start off, and it was just down. I don't think anything good happened.
I'm going to look that up. I think you beat
blocking it out.
Anyway,
I'm blocking it out.
2017, Notre Dame started unranked, and they finished number 11. In 2018, they were preseason number 12. Of course, went to the college football playoff and finished number 5. And then this past season, preseason number 9, postseason number 12. There's really nothing there to indicate that Notre Dame is consistently overrated in the preseason.
Listen, it's when you are the outlier like Notre Dame is, being independent, that you already have everybody who doesn't like you. They think you play for different rules. They think it's easier for you, when in reality it's harder because you can only get in the playoff as undefeated. By the way, it's harder, not easier, in my opinion. They got to be undefeated. But when that's your arrangement and you voluntarily want to operate as the outlier, people are locked and loaded whenever you give them the chance to announce you as overrated. And so what that means is when Notre Dame loses all these big games, it's hard for a guy like me to say they're not overrated, right? So when you lose these big opinion change games, the narrative could change if you win one of these games. Everybody's watching. It's the game of the week. We don't win those games. And so it's really hard for me to defend saying that we're overrated when every time we get into that moment, we fall a little bit short. So it's tough. But when you don't win any big games, people are going to say you're overrated because it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the easy thing to go to. And so it's just the way it is with Notre Dame when they're independent. Everybody's looking to take a shot from any different angle if they're allowed the opportunity. You not winning your big games is that opportunity. So I get it. I understand it. The only way to change it is to win.
John, you're probably not a very self-aware individual. I'm going to point something out to you that probably has never been stated before. Nobody's pointed this out to you, but P Digits is letting us know. I like this guy. He's animated. You probably didn't know that.
I've been told that before. And then I was told that I got to like duct tape my hands down when I'm doing this because I'm all over. It's like I'm running an orchestra over here. But I can't help it. I just get worked up when we're talking about this. I can't sit still.
I would like to see Notre Dame join a conference, but I also understand from Notre Dame's perspective, they lose some of that, probably a great deal of that unique quality if they're just in another conference just like everybody else.
I'm telling you, Mark, it doesn't interest me. And if people that aren't in this Notre Dame sphere of being born and bred and loving independence, it's a foreign concept, but I mean it 100% when I say, if we jumped into the Big Ten or the ACC full time and we won a championship, it would not feel the same to me. That would feel like a concession. That would feel like Notre Dame saying, we can't do it the way we did it when we got those 11 titles the last 100 years as an independent. We got to change something. It would not feel the same. It just wouldn't. And I don't think I'm speaking out of line for a lot of Notre Dame people. We like that independence. We value it. We know it's hard flying all over the country, playing all different styles of football. It's hard, but we like it. That's who Notre Dame is. I don't want to see a change. Now, the interesting thing is what happens if one year these goofball NCAA people or the committee says, you know what, things are getting too complicated. If you're not in a Power 5, you're not considered. Like if they pull that card some year, then Notre Dame's really going to be in it. I don't know what would cause them to do it. But if that happens someday, then we have to have a different discussion. If they say you're just not being considered unless you're in a P5.
One reason in which I don't think it's a big deal is that this is not the NFL. So let's say we were looking at the NFL playoffs and that was selected subjectively like the college football playoff. And we had 6 divisions in the NFL. What do we have? 8 divisions in the NFL. And then for some reason, we just had some teams sitting out here playing just an NFL schedule, but they didn't belong to a division. And we had to decide at the end of each season, they're 11-5. Should they be in the play? They're 9-7. But comparing teams in college football from the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, there is very little overlap to make any kind of reasonable determination of who should and should not make the playoff. It comes down to very much a rigid line, which I have no issue with. Okay, did you win your conference? Okay, well, Oregon won the conference, but Oklahoma won its conference. Oklahoma lost 1, Oregon lost 2. Boom. And that makes sense. I still hate the system, but it makes sense if we leave it in the hands of this committee. So it's not that much different to compare what Notre Dame's doing against its schedule, which is actually a more legitimate schedule than most because there's not the 4 non-conference games like all the teams in the SEC play, and then they typically only play one good team, a Power 5, and then you've got New Mexico State, the Citadel, and Middle Tennessee State, where Notre Dame, in some ways, it's, I don't want to say easier, but more valid to judge its schedule because they play 5 in the ACC, couple in the Big Ten, few in the Pac-12, couple in the SEC, and you're like, okay, well, they played a well-rounded cross-section of the Power 5 more so than anybody else in the country.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. But what you're underestimating is the fact that you're reasonable and you're capable of being reasonable at admitting that. So I appreciate it, but you're not going to hear that in the dark alleys of Twitter, okay? You're not going to hear that in my YouTube comments section. So you're absolutely right. And here's the other thing, too, with this Notre Dame 12-game, 13-game dispute that always pops up when Notre Dame's relevant in a season. Here's what I'm going to say. If you're scheduling these FCS teams, then you're out. It's 12 games to 12 games. And just because you might lose to one does not mean it was okay to schedule one. That's a bad argument. That means you made two mistakes. Schedule an FCS and let them beat you. Currently, Notre Dame and UCLA are the only two programs that have never scheduled an FCS. So if your school's doing that, especially the ones that like to build in a bye in mid-November by doing it, I don't want to hear about your 12 to 13 game Notre Dame issues. Quit scheduling JV teams.
I think I did make mention to this, John, and you won't necessarily like this, but because of the way Notre Dame approaches scheduling, I've not had an issue with them being. I've had an issue systematically with them not being in a conference, but in regards to their competition toward playing in a college football playoff, I've had no issue because of Baylor was one step away from playing in a college football playoff. They were playing in the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma in overtime, and Baylor's non-conference schedule is abysmal. Texas, San Antonio, and Lamar, and whomever they play, Baylor never plays anybody. So I'm generally okay with it, except I got to say that 2018 run in which we had Oklahoma and Ohio State battling for that final position, and I'm sitting there on championship weekend, and Oklahoma had beaten Texas. Ohio State's beating Northwestern's brains out that night, and I'm thinking one of these two teams is going to get left out, and Notre Dame's not playing today.
Well, you know what my answer to that is? Here's my answer to that. Why doesn't Ohio State not get blown out by Purdue? Like, that's my point. If Notre Dame gets not only blown out, if Notre Dame loses a game, they're out of the playoff. Okay, so I get that argument, but why would Ohio State get to bake in a blowout loss to an average or mediocre team and then think they deserve to go to the playoff? Don't get blown out by a bad team. Then your problem solved.
Well, this is not about Ohio State, this live stream, but my argument would be they had better wins than Oklahoma. So, yes, they had the worst loss, but they also had better wins than Oklahoma. And that was the comparison, not Notre Dame. Yeah. But I was sitting there at one point in the evening thinking Notre Dame's not having to step on the field and risking a loss like everybody else is right now.
That's an understandable frustration from a Notre Dame hater, not a Notre Dame fan. What I would say to that in a response is, it's going to be extremely rare to have years where Notre Dame's literally undefeated and in line to get a playoff spot. It's going to be rare. It's very, very hard to do to go 12-0, especially with Notre Dame's schedules, okay? So, you know what? You guys can deal with it once every 5, 6, 7 years that they go undefeated and get a chance. And if you want to bring up how Notre Dame's looked bad, you know, they got blown out by Clemson, never let them in again. Look what happened. We put Notre Dame in and look what they did. You better say that about Oklahoma too then, because they've had more bites at that apple and gotten kicked around more than Notre Dame. So if you want to use that argument against us, why doesn't it apply to Oklahoma? Because they're in a fancy conference? Ooh, the Big 12, look out, said nobody. So if you want to go there, we could go there. But you better hammer Oklahoma too. Make it fair. Hammer them.
We would never hammer Cheryl. She joins us for all the live streams. She's a Buckeyes fan, but she joins us for all the live streams. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And lets everyone know that we bring hardcore college football discussion on as many teams as we can possibly get to. So we've done live streams in the past couple weeks from Miami and Ohio State and Florida State and Notre Dame, Oregon, USC, Virginia Tech, UCF, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Florida, and I'm probably forgetting a few. So keep it in locked here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And we appreciate the conversation with John Kennedy. Join him on Always Irish.
It's always a joy, man.
Absolutely.
You got me all wound up now, Mark.
I did. We even went 11 minutes over.
Yeah, once we get going on this, the time flies.
Oh, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. We'll see if there's anything else in the live chat before we let John go. Don't see anything else of note. Again, keep in mind that if you appreciate that, Ryan, always Irish, Mark Rogers, Uncle Lou, the best in college football podcast. Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate the support. And if you love college football, subscribe right here because we get the notifications out and you know when the live streams are coming. And yes, I will be taking phone calls. People ask me all the time, Mark, when are you going to start taking phone calls again, as I used to do like several times a week, and we will get on that very soon. John, we appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. Hopefully we can get your buddies on board and we can talk some more Notre Dame football and make this a weekly deal.
It's always fun. I love the interaction, even when I disagree.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, man.
Take care, Mark.